So she came to me and she said, so Kate, I've got this issue with vaginal dryness. Sex is becoming painful. And I said, you have come to the right place. And you are talking to the right person because I have a solution for you. And I introduced her to the concept of vaginal estriol cream. And this was transformative. It really helped her. Within a couple of weeks, she was, let's just say, back in the saddle and enjoying herself in a way that she had not really been able to for a while.
Right.
And because we are both businesswomen, she's a serial entrepreneur, she's, whip smart. And, we sat around. I just knew there was a gap.
Menopause has long been tabooed and shrouded in secrecy, leaving many ashamed and embarrassed about seeking and extending support for this sacred rite of passage. Well, the spirit and mood have changed, and we're surrendering to curiosity, knowledge, and empowerment. In this podcast, I'm sharing my own experiences and point of view, peeking into the lifestyles and rituals of people experiencing menopause, and tapping into experts for their take on the pausal phase. This is for you if you are one of the millions of people in the menopausal phase or want to support them. I'm Dixie Lincoln Nichols, health and well-being educator and founder. This is the Pause Pod.
Hey there, my sweet peas. Welcome back to another episode of the Pause Pod. Joining me today is Kate Wells. She is a hormone expert and true biochem nerd who has been educating practitioners about hormones for many years. Starting out as a high school science teacher and then pivoting to the business world, Kate knew she wanted to combine her passions for science and business and found the perfect match in leadership roles at labs specializing in hormone testing and hormone formulation. Kate is the author of Forecast for Health, Understanding Your Potential for Lifelong Wellness, and is the CEO and co-founder of Parlor Games. Kate holds a BS and MBA and has completed a fellowship in herbal medicine. Kate and her team at Parlor Games are on a mission to save the world one vagina at a time by continuing to educate women and health practitioners on the role of hormones in optimal longevity. Welcome to the Pause Pod, Kate. Thank you so much for saying yes to this conversation that I'm so looking forward to. Thank you.
Dixie, it's just a pleasure to be here. I'm so excited for the conversation with you. I love what you're doing to elevate the conversation for women going through, all the changes associated with menopause. It's fantastic that you're doing this. So thank you.
And what a great feeling it is, right? To be able to have these conversations that we weren't having before, and now to see all of this intergenerational dialogue happening. I'm just so thrilled to be a part of it and thrilled to have you here to share your perspective with me and the listeners. So let's dive right into it. Your company aims to get women through menopause with science, sisterhood, and solutions. Can you share a bit about how this mission was conceived and how it guides your work? And of course, before you do that, tell us a bit about yourself and how you came to be doing this work.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, now at age 62, when I look back on my life, all the stepping stones were there, but as I was going through them, I wasn't necessarily seeing that they were leading to something. But here I am. I have had a long career in business, working in the integrative medicine field, in hormone testing laboratories. And although I'm a businesswoman through and through and through and through, I love the biochemistry that I was finding myself working with. And so I dove in and really began to teach myself and understand more. I listened to, I can't tell you, thousands of webinars and presentations at conferences. So I built my knowledge to add on top of the business stuff. And I was a part owner of our hormone cream company. We had topical hormone creams for the practitioner market. And so that was continuing to expand my knowledge. And then one day, my best friend, Kirsty Hag, who we've known each other since our daughters were 3 in preschool, and they are now rising 31. So she came to me and she said, "So Kate, I've got this issue with vaginal dryness. Sex is becoming painful." And I said, "You have come to the right place. And you are talking to the right person because I have a solution for you." And I introduced her to the concept of vaginal estriol cream. And this was transformative. It really helped her. Within a couple of weeks, she was, let's just say, back in the saddle and enjoying herself in a way that she had not really been able to for a while.
Right.
And because we are both businesswomen, she's a serial entrepreneur, she's, whip smart. And, we sat around. I just knew there was a gap in not just practitioner knowledge, because I was filling that through the course of this, professional line of creams, but in everyday women. Women had no idea what is going wrong with their hormones. And in particular, this area that she had mentioned, vaginal dryness, just that generalized irritation, makes it uncomfortable to wear jeans, etc. That's just one small snippet. And with that impetus from her, and my knowing that there was just this really, really big gap in information for women about menopause, we decided to develop a product. And our flagship product, the big thing that we introduced to everybody, is a vaginal estriol cream, and it's called Silky Peach Cream because we want everybody's peach to be nice and silky again. So
I love
that's just
that.
the inception of all of that. So from that, as we got into this, and I will say I love being on customer service. I'm not allowed to be on customer service anymore because I talk way too much. Whoever I'm talking to on the phone, I love talking about hormones because there are such gaps in our knowledge about what is going on from, when we begin to experience those issues related to perimenopause, which can be as early as our late 30s, through that period or phase of our lives, I should say, where our periods are changing, where we have new symptoms appearing, and we can go into those if you think that's important. Through that menopausal transition, where our periods are really starting to, stretch out. Sometimes they can be really heavy, sometimes they can be really light, and that happens somewhere between sort of late 40s, through our early 50s. We can think of that as the menopausal transition. But then to life afterwards, when we are truly done with menopause, then there are a whole host of additional symptoms that come along, many of which are silent. And so whenever, like I say, I'm not allowed on customer service because I once I get going, I get going. There's so much that we can share and educate women about. So what I have found is that by dividing, this conversation about menopause into three categories, it helps us understand a little bit more about where we are. So when we are in our, late 30s, but definitely into our early 40s, we need to think about the dance between two major hormones, estrogen and progesterone. Now, estrogen is made from our ovaries, and more of it is released in the first half of the cycle. And that is responsible for growing the endometrium, the uterine lining. There's two layers to it. One is kind of a basal layer that's always there. And then next to it is what's called a functional layer of that uterine lining. And estrogen will prompt that functional layer to start growing and expand. And blood vessels start to weave into that functional layer. And it gets thicker and thicker, ready for implantation of a fertilized egg, if that should happen. So that's the first half of the cycle. That's when the uterine line is growing. So then the second half of the cycle, the egg is released at ovulation from the ovary, and it starts its journey along the uterine lining, along the fallopian tube into the uterus. Now, the big source of progesterone, which is the natural balancer to estrogen, is in the little sac that is around the ovum. And so we tend to see a surge of progesterone in the second half of the cycle. Estrogen surges in the first, progesterone surges in the second half. And that helps that functional layer of the uterus that has been growing. That helps it, what's called differentiate. It helps it strengthen and be part of that readiness for implantation of a fertilized egg. Now, what happens is that into our early 40s and then with greater and greater frequency, we don't ovulate. There's no egg released. We still get our periods. But if we're not making that egg, if it's not being released from the ovary, we're not making a big surge of progesterone to balance the estrogen. So we still get the surge of estrogen. It's not balanced by progesterone. And that's when things start to go to hell in a handbasket, because estrogen is good, unbalanced, it's nutty in there. And that's when we start to get our symptoms. We start to hear women complaining about tender breasts. Of course, estrogen is making them grow. We tend to hear about bad, mood swings. We tend to start hearing about not being able to sleep. And this is a big part of this is to do with we are not making the amount of progesterone that we used to in the past. And so for many women, once they start beginning to see these patterns, if they start using some topical progesterone, particularly in the second half of their cycle, then they're getting that balancing effect. And so many of those symptoms that they're experiencing will be diminished or go away completely if they've got. It's almost like two sides of a teeter-totter, and if you can balance that, then this perimenopausal phase can be an awful lot easier.
Got it. Now that's so interesting and key, of course, the role of progesterone as a modulator, because I think so much of the attention is on estrogen and what's happening. But what role is its sister, friend, playing in this whole cascade of events that unfold as our bodies start to progress further along this continuum? So thank you for sharing that, because I think the biology that you shared, the science of the body, will give a little bit more perspective as to what's happening internally that causes our bodies to go haywire.
Right, absolutely. Yes, progesterone in particular has lots of impacts on the brain. One of the things that progesterone does, it's broken down into a metabolite of progesterone called allopregnanolone. And allopregnanolone, a form of neurotransmitter, will increase the production of GABA. And GABA is one of our calming neurotransmitters. I tend to think, if I want an image of GABA, I think about a purring cat sitting on somebody's lap. All is calm, all is good. And GABA is essential for us, managing just the daily stresses of life. And without it, if something sets us off, some idiot drives in front of us in traffic, or there's a pile of work just landed on our desk, or we open a file and we think, oh no, I didn't do this, or a child, or at this point often it's not child but a teenager, flips out, or whatever it might be. We need the production of GABA to help us manage our own stress response to these things. And as progesterone is dropping, so is our GABA. We've all heard, stories or done it ourselves where we just walked into a room and somebody was chewing too loudly and that flipped us off. That's a symbol of low GABA. Um, Things that set us off. And
That
of
quick
course,
to react.
yes, quite
Yeah,
very. We haven't got a modulator on there.
right,
And of
right.
course, it's important for sleep as well. And it's during our 40s and onwards when sleep really becomes disrupted. And of course, once you're disrupting that, there's so many systems in the body and the brain which begin to deteriorate.
Thank you for sharing that. Now, I want to move on to your educational approach. And it's obvious that you love providing education, which I think is key because people need to understand and get the knowledge and education about all things perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, so that they can make informed decisions for themselves. I think without information, it's very difficult to make decisions that are best for your well being, and you provide education. So tell us, how do you balance this education and the scientific information that you provide with engaging content, right? You've got engaging content and then you've got education. How do you balance those two?
Um, well, we learned early on that, oh, yes, I'm good at talking about the science, but sometimes I can go down a rabbit hole. And we have team members who are good at taking my sometimes dry, earnest information, biology information that I'm sharing, and sassing it up.
Hmm.
And so it's a team. So much of what we do at Parlor Games is a team. And I don't bring an ego to this. If I can provide a framework that somebody can come along and make it a little bit more accessible, then we have a win. I don't have to do it all. It's how we work together as a team. And so we have blogs. There are, gosh, there must be 120 articles in our blog section now. We have a newsletter that looks at some of the science researches, and our writer who does this, she has a great time researching articles. And then we have a Science Sunday that comes out with snippets of information about science as it relates to hormones. So we have more than one mind on this, and it's not just my science mind. We have some fun, sassy approaches. And a lot of that, I think, sits at the feet of my business partner, Kirsty Hegg. She knew right from the beginning that we had to be sassy about this. And it's, we have a private Facebook group, Sexy Sassy Sisterhood, and it is just for our customers. And they get the chance to join, gosh, it must be 35,000 women now in that group, sharing ideas and bringing their stories and knowing that they're not alone. And so it's not just information that we bring, it's information that people in that group bring as well.
So I would assume that's where the sisterhood is really tight in the group where people can interact with one another and provide support for one another.
Yes, very much so. For so many women, particularly, in the age group 60 plus, the 70s, and we have women there in the 80s, they have never had a safe space where they could talk about such intimate areas of their health. Women, we don't, most women don't walk around talking about vaginal dryness, but it's not just that. It's urinary incontinence. For some women, it's fecal incontinence. There are so many issues related to genitourinary health that are not discussed. And this is one place where there truly is safety, where there's community for women to sit around and talk, as we have done as long as there have been women. So
Oh, I love that. It's so needed. And like you said, so many women have never had the opportunity to have these intimate conversations. So imagine experiencing this transition that we know could be so complex alone. What a blessing it is to have a space to come to where all of the other women in that space is experiencing something similar, not identical because we're all unique, but something similar. I want to talk a bit more about the products that Parlor Games has to offer, like the Silky Peach Cream and the Vibrant Third Progesterone. Tell me more about them and what they are designed to do. Just walk us through a little bit about the product development process as well.
absolutely. So as I mentioned before, this came out of Kirsty's need for some estriol to maintain that vaginal tissue. And so I developed a product. We worked with our manufacturing partner to come up with a formula We try and keep this as clean as possible. A lot of organic ingredients in there. And so Silky Peach Cream is an estriol cream. Each pump has about 0.5 milligrams of estriol in there, and many women will need to use 2 pumps to begin with, particularly if they have been dealing with the just dryness issue for multiple years. Because what they're wanting to do is like rebuild the supply of estriol in this tissue. It's like rebuilding a reservoir. And so Silky Peach Cream is for that. It's applied to the vulva and is absorbed in through the skin and kind of suffuses out, using that really dense network of capillaries that there is in that region. Kind of spreads that and refills the reservoir of estrogen, and that helps that skin repair itself. And I would say that's the vast majority of our customers come in because this is an area they're trying to resolve. And then after a while, once we got going with this, then the questions came from our customers, well, if we're using estrogen, even estriol, which is the weakest of the estrogens, don't we need some progesterone too? And our response was, aha, yes, you do. And we have been developing Vibrant Third progesterone cream. This has 25 milligrams of progesterone in it, but it has a whole host of other ingredients that have antioxidant capacities, anti-inflammatory capacities, and that it's not just a progesterone cream, but we have that one available as well. And we have fun with our naming, clearly. Silky Peach Cream is a sassiness to that. When it came to the Vibrant Third, what for me really, what I want more than anything for women is, as they go through this menopause transition and they're past the worst of it, they can be living 30, 35 years, and I want with all my heart that those are vibrant years where they're out doing the things they love. They are with the people they love. If they are mission driven, that they have the energy and enthusiasm to live that mission. I want that for all women. I want that for our customers. And so that's kind of why we went with the Vibrant Third, so that this third phase of life is full of life. And so then, again, we got feedback from our customers. It's like, this is helping. Silky Peach is helping my lady bits, and Vibrant Third is helping me with sleep and helping my mood and helping my, I'm just a bit more relaxed. But I'm tired. This is another aspect that women begin to experience as they get older, as they go through this transition. And a lot of that is at the foot of or the root of why we lose our impetus for life. We're tireder. And one of the other important hormones is dihydroepiandrosterone, or DHEA for short. And DHEA is a hormone that oftentimes bodybuilders will use because it can be converted to testosterone. But that's in massive doses, and that's not what we're talking about, massive amounts. So we introduced a DHEA cream, and this is it's a nice robust dose. It's like 5 milligrams. So some people use the whole 5 milligrams, and some people will use half of that. But I have to tell you, I've always been someone with plenty of energy, but I was noticing around about 60, something changed. I just didn't have that oomph that I was used to having. And when we were developing the cream, I put some of this DHEA on. And within 2 or 3 days, I was running around like, I'm back! I felt like I was 10 years younger. It was like back to being 50, where at 50, I was like the Wizard of Oz. It was going on behind me. It was everything. I had so much going on. And it was, my brain just loved having this hormone back in my body. It's a wellness hormone. It's very important for neuroprotection. It's got lots of neuroactive components to it, but it converts to testosterone and then onto estradiol. And so it's not just a hormone in its own right. it's the foundation for other hormones. And so it just, for me, it felt fantastic to have this back in my body again. And we call this rebounce because we want women rebounding as their own internal production of DHEA goes down. There's no reason why they shouldn't be without it if that's what they want.
So it's a bounce back.
It really is, yes. Because that's what it felt like to me. I mean,
Right,
this
right.
10-year gap, I had lost track of how slowly and incrementally my energy and my motivation had diminished. And I can tell you, founding and running this business, I need all the energy we can get because there is so much demand for this. Our team is growing all the time. There's lots that I have to pay my attention to, and I need my brain on. So,
Can you use all of the products simultaneously?
in many cases, yes. I mean, we used to make all these hormones when we were younger. We were a hormone soup. We were, we were, we were making them all. We had them all, and our body is used to having them all. I mean, if you have been without for a while, it's probably not a good idea to start them all at once. You want to just allow your body time to adjust. But yes, this is simply beginning to, get those chemical messengers that hormones are, back into our system, and in some ways to wake it up or to, re-energize it. And we do have some suggestions. I mean, we're not clinicians, and what one of our consistent messages is if you do have questions, go and ask your practitioner. We know sometimes there's a gap in practitioners' knowledge, and so we try and provide resources and the education so that somebody does feel empowered to ask their doctor. And then of course, they can go into the Sexy Sassy Sisterhood and ask, like, I want to use all three. How did you all go about using all three? Share your stories with me. And at the minute anyone asks that kind of question, they'll have 100 responses within half an hour. Women will share as we do. So, but yes, they can all be interwoven together.
Wonderful. Let's talk about some of the challenges that you faced as a business owner and even your own menopause story. And I'd like to hear a little bit more about your menopause story and how you navigated that process. What were some of the challenges you faced with menopause and with creating a menopausal product?
Well, I don't really have a menopause story because I started using progesterone probably around age 47. So I was filling that gap, that my body was no longer making it. And I will probably turn everybody green with envy on this, but I flew through menopause. I mean, I've always been fit, and I've always been healthy, and I exercise, I eat very cleanly, and I guard my sleep with a ferocity. But I think for me, it was making sure I had enough progesterone to balance the estrogen that my body was still making. Made all the difference. I probably had, I don't know, 5 hot flashes. So for me, it was very straightforward, and I would use progesterone in the second half of my cycle in my late 40s. And then something happened. I had a sequence of, I was traveling a lot for work, and timing was, for whatever reason, I decided, oh no, I don't want my period that week. And so I just started using progesterone across the whole month. And that, of course, suppresses, your period once you're older. And that, then it was like, oh, yes, I don't have to keep stimulating the cycle by using the progesterone just in the second half of my cycle. I could use it, 21 days out of 28, or just consistently. And so I just kind of eased through it. And I can remember once being at a conference in New York. We were exhibiting there, and I had the mother of all periods. It was like soaking through a pad in an hour. after not having had a period for, close on a year. And then that was it. This really heavy period and done. And progesterone was the piece to it. Now, of course, give it a little bit of time. And then the lack of estrogen, began to impact my vaginal tissue. I began to think, oh yeah, I'm beginning to need that, and so I incorporated that. And then one of the areas that we haven't really touched on yet is incontinence. I began to find that if I was running, I might leak a little bit, or if I was coming down a hillside particularly fast, I might leak a little bit. And so I upped my use of the estriol cream, and that made a difference. I do have to do pelvic floor exercises as well. I had one very long delivery with my first child. And that, any vaginal delivery, it's going to change the geography of that whole area of your body, the whole pelvis. And I know I feel the impact of that, as do many women. So I have to make sure that I am using estriol cream. And then as I got sort of into my late 50s, I began to realize that I could benefit from a little bit of estradiol as well, which is the heavier, stronger estrogen. And then, like I say, once we developed the DHEA cream, I added that in as well. And so it's just been this gradual introduction as I would see these cluster of changes or symptoms and begin to think, oh, all right, those are associated with low this, those are associated with low that. And so again, based on my knowledge, my unique experience of having exposure to this, I was able to work out, all right, let's just try adding these things in. So that's my experience.
That's a great story. Your experience and your knowledge in the area of hormones allowed you to be able to make the distinctions in terms of what was happening to you. Also, what I'm hearing is that the products are made for women across the menopausal continuum. Perimenopause, of course, the hard stop, menopause, and postmenopause, which is so important. And earlier you said when menopause is done, is it ever done? Because once you're in postmenopause, it's like you're there for the rest of your life. So, how does it
Right.
help, continue to help after the period's gone, as we keep moving on further along into postmenopause? Like, what do they do for the body to make us feel well?
So one of the things that I think, is I would love for your listeners to take away from this conversation is the understanding that, the symptoms that we experience when we're going through perimenopause and that menopause transition, they get a lot of attention. They are obvious. They are hot flashes. They are mood swings. They are angers and rages, and there's can't sleep. They are extremely obvious. They get attention. Once we are into that post-menopause phase, for the next 35 years or so, many of these symptoms are silent. We don't notice them. We don't put them together as a cluster of symptoms. So I think a big piece of our education for postmenopausal women needs to be just because you don't notice them, these symptoms doesn't mean they're not going on. So what I'm talking about is, still disrupted sleep, incontinence, but then it's things like bone health. When we lose our estrogen and our progesterone and our testosterone, bone health is impacted. When we lose our DHEA, we lose a little bit of our motivation and our get up and go, and it's just easier to sit on the couch. Without all of those hormones, there are big impacts on the brain, on learning and memory. And it might not be that very few of us are off to college to do, a PhD or a master's post-menopause. We're not talking about that kind of learning, but if we go to live in a new place, maybe we're snowbirds or something. When we go to that new place, we still need to map it in our brain so we know how to get to the grocery store and then to the post office and then to the bank or wherever it is. We still, we need to remember and map new things. So we need hormones to help with that process. So if we're noticing changes in memory, and I mean, I'm not even really talking about Alzheimer's and dementia cluster. This is just general working memory, or if we're becoming, experiencing foggy thinking. Those are symptoms of inadequate levels or insufficient levels of hormones. When we think about weight gain, many of our hormones are related to modulating our insulin, and insulin is important for getting glucose into the cell to make energy. And when it can't do that, the glucose gets shunted off into little groups of 3 triglycerides and deposited in a fat cell. And so weight gain continues to be, an issue after menopause. I'm not coming at this from what somebody looks like. It's the impact, the physiological impact on the body. The more we gain weight, the more we stress our body trying to pump blood around it. And then, of course, there's the whole cluster of cardiovascular symptoms rather. And hormones are important for maintaining the health of the cardiovascular system, particularly on the inside of all our blood vessels. So we're not going around thinking, ooh, what do the inside of my blood vessels look like? That's what I mean about these silent symptoms. And so being proactive with your health by making sure you have sufficient hormones, I think is one of the biggest steps that we can take to be healthy for a long time after that menopausal transition.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, for pointing out those, especially those three silent issues that so many women experience, unfortunately, but often tend to ignore: bone health, cardiovascular health, blood glucose health. And then, of course, you said something earlier: brain health. So it's like these are the things that we have to really pay attention to in postmenopause. And the products you designed are designed to help support those areas, correct?
Yes, very much so. And one thing, if I may add,
Mhm.
I honestly would love it if we didn't need to exist. But there are so many practitioners who this is just not an area of knowledge for them. Many practitioners, their only training that they have regarding menopause support is to put someone on a birth control pill during perimenopause to try and balance out their hormones. And then, you know, consider giving them a little bit of estrogen as they are postmenopause, but there's still so much confusion among practitioners, and they don't have the resources. They are not trained to think about this endocrinology, this hormones in this same way. Many of them have had 5 hours or less training. So, so we do need to exist, and we do need to try and provide education so that women can feel informed when they go to the practitioner. There is one other thing that we decided to add. We work with a lab to provide hormone testing. There are different ways to test hormones, and that can be a whole 1 hour lecture for practitioners about different ways to test your hormones. But if someone is using topical hormones or creams, hormone creams that go through the skin, science studies illustrate pretty conclusively that testing your hormones in saliva is the way to go. And so, we're aware that, women are somewhat experimenting with what works for their bodies. We can give them general ideas, they can talk to their friends, they can talk to the community, but they're somewhat experimenting. And so if they want to have a bit more information, we have teamed up with a lab to provide that testing.
Oh, that's wonderful. So they get their diagnostic testing, they understand their deficiencies, and then they're able to act on that based on what the results are,
Right.
which is perfect. And I totally agree. The medical community is now coming into awareness about the depth and the breadth of what it actually means to be menopausal, perimenopausal, postmenopausal, and the degree of education that's needed to pass on to patients in order for them to feel trustful to
Right.
take that information to act upon it for themselves. We're now seeing that momentum build. And like you said, it would be great if you didn't have to be here, but here you are filling a gap that's evidently there and providing information and resources for women. Again, our experiences are so unique and we all require something. What that something is, we don't know, but with the information and the education that you're providing, women can say, maybe this is what I need, maybe this is what I need to try, and they have these options. But without the education, people are afraid to do anything
Mhm.
because they're afraid of outcomes, right? And
Right.
not knowing what the outcomes will be for them. So I think this is great. I love your approach to education, informing, and also building community through the sisterhoods that you have. What advice would you give to women entering menopause who are seeking reliable information and support?
It is a fascinating and interesting phase in that there is more information coming into the space. So how do you separate a company that's just selling a product and has some information there from a company that's got this earnest desire to help educate? How do you separate? And I would say, look for information that's backed by science, that has literature references, or that the company can provide those literature references. There aren't the massive studies on bioidentical hormones that there were on the synthetic hormones, and yet there are plenty of studies out there. And so, be prepared to ask the question. Any company, if you're looking at the product and trying to decide if it's a good fit for you, reach out to their customer service and say, what are the studies that you have that support the the use of your product? And any company worth its salt should have that resource available. And then look at reviews. We know that reviews are somewhat stacked by chatbots sometimes, but there are some reputable external review companies, and find a company that uses one of those. We use a third-party review company. We have no say in what people write. When a review comes across, we look at them. We do get some number 1 out of 5 stars. It's often been related to a snafu with shipping. That's why we get a 1 star, because for some reason USPS has lost a package. But we do respond to all the reviews that come through. So do your due diligence, and look at reviews, and ask questions. Yeah, be empowered. Be empowered to ask questions, and not to roll over and say, oh, that's good enough. No, keep asking questions.
Yeah, love that advice. The bottom line is do your work, ask the questions. I wanted to address this because I think Parlor Games is addressing it really beautifully. Menopause is often considered a taboo subject. It's been a taboo subject for such a long time. There's so much stigma attached to it, which is why so many women didn't want to talk about it. How do you think Parlor Games addresses that issue of taboo and breaking the taboos associated with menopause and the passage?
Well, well, I think we crash through most of those taboos just with what we write about. Um, when we hire new members for our customer service team, one of our very first questions we ask is, "Are you comfortable talking about vaginas?" And um, we use clinical terms. I mean, we're not clinical clinicians, but we use anatomical terms. Let's just be adult about this. You're right that, for it's not just like the last 200 years or something, but, from centuries, this whole topic of women bleeding, and that, from their body, from their vagina, and the labeling of that as something grubby. I don't think that's come from women. Let's just say that.
Absolutely.
we live that every month for, probably 144 times in our lives, depending on how many children we have and how long we breastfeed. And, we live that experience. So I think a piece of this is about women stepping into claiming this is a significant part of my body, and it's about time we talked about this, and it's about time we stopped running around like teenage boys being all leery and weird about it. We just we call it like it is. This is physiology, and we talk about that. And I think the more we do that, the more open we are in conversations like this, in presentations, in outreach to people. The more we are straightforward, focused on the physiology, we take away that, like, this almost the slur that there is on women's menopausal health. We take away that feeling of like ridicule that seems to surround it. Oh, she's just menopausal. It's like,
Yeah, as though it's nothing. Love that.
right,
Yes. You
right.
call it as it is, call it what it is. Absolutely. Totally agree. And we're breaking a lot of the stigmas, and you are obviously a North Star for so many in the work that you're doing and the way in which you're doing it. I'd love for you to share two things. Number one, what's next for Parlor Games? And what are three self-care rituals you depend on consistently? It doesn't have to be every day, but what are three that helps to bring well-being to you so that you can have the energy that you have to do all the things you're doing in Parlor Games and in your daily lives? Share some with us.
What's next for Parlor Games? Well, what is so interesting, Dixie, is that when Kirsty and I started this out, we've never had goals per se. It was, well, let's just try it. It feels like the right thing to do. It feels like we've been directed in this direction, pointed in this direction. Let's try it and see. And it took off, and it's taken off, and it's taken off, and it's taken off. We hired a COO this year, where we're this year is making some big infrastructure investments in our company, so that we are well structured to continue. I think really what's next is for Parlor Games is continuing. One of the pieces that we haven't really touched on at all is I have this deep spiritual grounding, and connection to to source or to the universe. And whenever I'm like unsure or not clear about a way forward, I get still, I meditate, and a big part of certainly what this is for me is about putting myself in the hands of the universe to be of service. And so as long as I continue to be open to that, the way forward always arrives. And so it's one big long exercise in trust and courage and bravery, as we keep going. So there are no specific goals other than to keep doing what we can to really help women, and trust that the resources arrive. And oh my goodness, they do. Our team of women are fantastic. The universe continues to shine on us and who we bring on. So I think it's more of the same, continuing to trust and do what we can to change the world one vagina at a time, which is our company mission.
Love it.
And then for me, self-care. Well, I just did that this weekend. My partner and I, we went down to Ouray. I live in Grand Junction, Colorado, and we went south down to Ouray for the weekend. And I did not take my laptop. Yes,
Oh,
I did not
that's a
take my
big one.
laptop.
I
And
love that.
we went for a hike because we love to be outside, and he drove, so I don't have to think about that. And we just noodled along, and we did a little shopping in Ouray town, which is lots of galleries, and it was lovely to mooch around. We sat on a bench drinking tea and relaxed, and so relaxing, getting away from the work, getting outside, I mentioned before about sleep. It's a critical piece of my self care is sleep. And then, I eat a very clean diet, a lot of organic food, and nothing that's kind of inflammatory, because inflammation is at the root of aging and disease. So, putting the right things in my body, making sure it gets exercise and some laughter and calm, peaceful enjoyment and kind of meditation. That's how it all wraps together.
I love it. And if it does what it's supposed to do, which is keep you grounded and centered and feeling well, then that's it. I tell people all the time, the rituals don't have to be rigid. The rituals can be easy. And I love those natural flowing rituals that you have. You just kind of do the things that feels good for you, that brings you the well-being that you desire. That's simply it. Thank you for sharing those. And my last question to you is I usually ask an if, what, and question. So, if you could design a game, and I'm only asking this because I know Parlor Games and because you bring fun to the whole thing, so I'm throwing it out there. If you could design a game that perfectly captures the midlife experience, its ups and downs, and hilarious moments, what would it be called and how would you play it?
Well, it would be something along the lines of menopause mayhem. And gosh, it would be like the game of life. It takes me back to when I was a kid. My dad made us this board game. My dad's very creative, very smart
Wow, look
brain,
at that.
and he made this game, and it was you were in a car and you were on a journey, and if you went too fast around this corner and you threw the wrong dice the wrong way, it'd spin out, and it would be a game, like a board game like that, where it was things like had four hot flashes in one meeting, and something would happen, and so it would be symptom related, and it would be structured so that it wasn't one thing after another. You could work your way through it with grace and ease, but there would be plenty of road trips, or road speed bumps on the way through that. I think it would be that, and but it would be physical as well. I'm a very physical person. I like games like Pictionary,
Mm,
and charades where you get up and you move. I love that. I love to dance, and so this game would have things that you had to get up and do if you landed on that square. So you get four hot flashes. You have to run to the kitchen and get a cup of water and come back in 30 seconds. It would be nonsensical. It would
right.
make people laugh. I think that's what it would be.
Yes, and that's what it asked. Hilarious moments. I'm loving it. I'm loving the obstacle course that you're creating along the way, but nonetheless getting to the end, right? Navigating
Right.
through it in a way that's fun and that makes sense, but also, again, ultimately makes you feel well. By the time you get to the end, you're like,
Mm.
oh, look at me. I did it. I made it, and I'm still here, and I feel good. I love
Yeah.
it.
You could
I love
collect
it.
progesterone points along the way or something like that. I love it.
Thank you for sharing that. Kate, thank you so much. I mean, there's so much we can talk about. Tell our audience how we can find you and how we can stay connected with you.
Well, thank you for having me engage in this conversation. It's been lovely. Thank you. The best way to find us is www.parlor, Parlor, hyphen, the dash in there, and then the second word is games, games.com. So paula-games.com. That's how to find us. And then once you become a customer, then you can join the Sexy Sassy Sisterhood group where I think you all belong.
What about social medias? Any presence?
Yes, oh, very, very definitely on Facebook. Search for Parlor Games, and of course Instagram. We're there as well, and Pinterest. We're on there as well. Just look for you can. I think Instagram is Parlor Games Fun.
Parlor Games Fun. I
Mhm.
will be dropping all of these in the show notes so people can connect with you. Again, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a joy. Listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Let's perimenopause and prosper.